Africa has been a fast-growing grain import market for more than a decade, and not just because its population is mushrooming. Take wheat for instance. While Africa's population increased by 3.2% between 2007 and 2008 and the 2018-2019 growing seasons, the continent's wheat imports increased by 68% over the same period. This led to a surge from 27.3 million tons to 47 million tons. As the profitability of wheat and maize increase in Africa and even at home in Kenya, many companies are setting up camp. This is why this year's International Association of Operative Millers Middle and East Africa region, that is IAOM MEA Conference and Expo, was held aside from being an opportunity for millers and allied professionals learning from each other. This year's hosts were the Cereal Growers Association based in Kenya. The Cereal Growers Association is a national non-profit-based farmer organization incorporated in August of 1996. Its main objective is to bring together commercial cereal farmers to promote collective action for the sustained improvement of their farming enterprises and in addressing industry challenges in Kenya.
IAOM, which stands for the International Association of Operative Millers, has a chapter, the Middle East and Africa, and typically they hold a conference in Dubai every other year, and then they find an alternate venue. A couple of years ago, the Cereal Millers Association here in Kenya put in a proposal that we be given the opportunity to host the conference. And last year in Dubai, they announced that they'd assigned Kenya, Nairobi, for the conference this year, and hosted by the Cereal Millers Association. And I guess to add to that, East Africa is a very large growing milling market. And Kenya, we just heard that at the moment the region imports just under 2.5 million tons, and in 10 years, based on population growth, we expect it to be just under 12 million tons. So significant growth opportunity in this region over the next 10 years. 10 years.
Being the chair of this year's expo, Nick is extremely proud of the strides the grains industry has taken.
I think we had a very interesting session at the opening session yesterday, was looking at the future of technology, and we talked about a couple of important things as the impact of the digital revolution on where we're going in the milling industry, both in terms of the equipment we use, upgrading our technology, but also the conversations we have with our consumers, them going more and more digital. And the other thing is starting to look at the impact of alternate raw materials, not so much within wheat flour, but for the animal feeds business. Because the idea being that we're going to have to feed 9 billion people, and we're running out of land to grow those crops. I think, as we know here in Kenya, we suffer the same.
Ahmed Islam, the CEO of Mombasa Millers Limited, was also present during the two-day expo.
The key issues for this conference, it's to share knowledge between the Kenyan millers or the region by itself and the rest of the world. This is held between here, Middle East, and what we call Africa, the whole of Africa. So actually it moves from either Dubai to South Africa or Kenya or Ethiopia last year. We've had this last time, it was 2009. So we applied again for them to actually allow us to host it. It's an application, everybody applies, and whoever wins with all the facilities that they can provide for here. And as Kenya, as you know it, we have moved quite a lot in being able to provide or to accommodate large conferences like this. The members that have come in from the rest of the world, there are almost 540 members who have come in for this conference by itself, which is a very good number compared. The last one they had in Dubai was 900. Compare that we can have in Nairobi today at 450. It's quite an amazing number.
One of the things that stood out for Mohammed was the call to action by one of the presenters, Ian Roberts, to feed 9 billion people.
Those are the challenges that we're all having in the whole world, not us alone, in how to feed these people. So alternative feeding methods are there. Ian talked a lot about feeding animals with alternatives, apart from grains. They'd feed by insects and all other protein-based products that could be fed to animals. This is where I'm talking about. This is now sharing of that knowledge and technology for the rest of the world. As you know, technology is changing every day. It's changing faster than we can actually afford to consume it or actually learn it. But I mean, we have to keep up with it. And these conferences like this are the places where people share that and actually transfer that knowledge to the others.
Ian Roberts, just like Mohammed has lightly touched on, is a forward-thinking innovator whose call to action got many stakeholders in the forum thinking. Let's meet him.
My name is Ian Roberts. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Bühler. Bühler is a Swiss family-owned company that produces technologies for food production. So if you think about mills, if you think about post-harvest storage, if you think about cleaning solutions, ship loaders, ship unloaders, bakeries, pasta lines, biscuit lines, snack lines, all of these technologies would typically come from us.
For things to change, there needs to be more done. For instance, 25% of gas emissions are emitted from the agricultural sector. With the changing climate change effects, it is either now or never.
If you think about Bühler's position in the markets, we're very strong. Now, with that strength and that penetration of markets comes a certain responsibility. If you think about the challenge of how do we feed 9 billion people in 2050, and it's probably 9.8 billion people more likely that we will have in 2050, you just think about the situation we have today. 25% of greenhouse gas emissions are generated in agriculture. 71% of the world's fresh water is used in agriculture. A third of the world's energy is used in food manufacturing, and a third of the world's food is lost or wasted. And at the same time, over 800 million people are hungry. Now, if you think about that imbalance, we need to work together as an industry to do something. So yes, everybody needs profitable and sustainable businesses, but in addition, it's important that we consider the societal impact and the environmental impact. So we as a company brought all our customers together, and we had an event, and we had the people in the room who feed 4 billion people a day. And with them we agreed that we should tackle these problems by reducing waste by 30% and energy consumption by 30% in food value chains wherever we do business. Now, here, this is particularly important because food losses are high, because the logistics are not always optimized, because scale is small in agriculture and in production. And also here, across the whole sub-Saharan region, is where we have a huge percentage of the 800 million people who are hungry.
Ian is an optimist and a big believer in the talent and ability for people to change the world. It is this optimism that he carries on to his work.
I have enormous faith in human nature, perhaps too much sometimes. If I look at what the young people can do, if I look at the talent we have in the kids born this century, all the work we do with startups, the extraordinary technologies, the extraordinary capabilities coming out of startups, this entire digital revolution, if we cannot harness those technologies to provide a sustainable food value chain, then I'll be deeply surprised and deeply concerned. So I'm extremely optimistic that we have the capability to do this. We will have to adopt the technologies on a scale that we haven't adopted before. We will have to accept a level of transparency that people are very uncomfortable with today. But we will have to accept it. We will have to understand that business models are different. The concept of win-win has to be embedded in everything we do on digital. And the concept of sustainable value chains, if you say a sustainable value chain is one in which those who create value can extract wealth with a fair price on resources in the absence of subsidies. That's an idealistic approach, but win-win is critical there, and transparency is critical there. And I think finally, we have to drive wide-scale collaboration. No single party can achieve this. The reason it's so important for us to come to these kind of meetings is in the room you have the people who could be responsible for feeding this continent. And we have to work together to find these solutions.
As a man who has been in this industry for many years, we're curious to find out what his prediction on the industry's future looks like.
I think there are food trends that are very important. Now, if we think about, let's say, protein. People want adequate protein. Now, at the moment, of the plant protein we grow, 40% gets to our plates. The rest is lost in conversion into animal protein. The carbon footprint on this is astronomical, and it's a real burden on the environment. So we need to look at different ways, either of eating or of delivering protein to the animal feed chain. So one area that I think is very important, for example, is insects. Insects are very interesting. You can absorb up to 70% of the micronutrients of organic waste into the insect. You can have a 90% conversion of protein from the insect into fish or into chickens. And of course, fish and chickens eat insects. It's quite natural. You have a circular economy, you're learning from nature, and we make a change in the protein chain without changing consumer behavior, because consumer behavior is slow to change, and we don't have time to wait. So I think this entire alternative proteins is very important. If you look further ahead, can we grow meat in a lab? Now let's think about what we have with the burgers. There's wonderful companies around the world. I won't name them, but you can look them up. Now, the first burgers were in the million price range, and then they were down at a few $100,000, and now they're at tens of thousands. And in 3 years, they'll probably be the cost of premium steak. In 10 years, they will be affordable. Now, are people going to accept meat grown in a lab? Are people going to accept milk that hasn't come from dairy product, from cows, for example? But if they can, this changes completely the agricultural system.
It is now time to tour the exhibition. Let's start off. Grain storage on a subsistence farm is primarily based on minimizing grain loss. Grain loss can be caused by mold growth, bugs, birds, or any other type of contamination. For large commercial farmers, the problem is the same. If the stored crop is not sufficiently dry and cool, it may lead to insect infestation and certain things such as aflatoxin. Kimbria, one of the world's leading companies within industrial processing, has the solutions.
My name is Abungana Mushira. I'm the area sales manager for Kimbria East Africa. Kimbria East Africa and GSI are part of the ACO group, which deal with supply of equipment and technologies for the care of grains after harvest. And the equipment we supply, which includes grain dryers, grain conveying equipment, grain cleaners, electrical control, and storage silos, steel storage silos, are used to ensure that the grains and seeds are stored safely so that they are suitable for their end uses. End uses can include flour milling, include being used for animal feeds, for pressing oil, for even making pharmaceuticals, and again for seed. The equipment we supply is manufactured in Denmark and Europe in general, but here in East Africa we design systems and provide solutions while working close to the stakeholders, who include farmers, cooperatives, government agencies, processors, and traders. We it is important we are here to exhibit our products because we provide solutions to stakeholders to ensure that the grain is well stored for milling. And as you know, this exhibition is about milling. So ours is part of the process to ensure that the millers have grains which are good for their use, for producing flour.
To effectively cater to a myriad of clients, Cambria has expanded its reach to many countries across East Africa.
We work together with stakeholders to offer suitable solutions. So our local presence is important. Again, our equipment that we provide is high quality equipment to give high quality product before it can be used for the end purpose. Now in East Africa here, our offices are in Nairobi on Langata Road opposite the Galleria Mall. We have offices there which do project designs and project planning, supply of equipment and installation at the customer's premises. We also, other than that, offer after-sales service so that customers do not have to suffer should they need such a service, for example, to look after breakdowns or to look after need for spare parts or general advisory on that. Yes, basically we work with as I said, with farmers and also with processors who are generally like traders, merchants, and millers and so on. Our products, most of them are in the medium to high range in terms of capacity. But there are many big-scale farmers we work with.